a press release calling for Matt Flynn to withdraw from the governor's race. We have reviewed, probably thousands of documents at this point, and it was very clear that Matt Flynn was really at the center of the scandal that surrounded the sexual abuse of children by priests, which is a really alarming occurrence in our state's history. Matt Flynn represented the Milwaukee Archdiocese during one of really the most extensive and egregious priest-child abuse scandals in the country. As summarized in the documents that we did get out, and I hope you all did get an attachment, we wanted to be very, very careful with what we were saying and make sure that everything that we're saying is factual. These documents really make very clear that Flynn was very aware of priests' sexual abuse of children, that he assisted in transferring priests who were known abusers, that he failed to and sometimes prevented others from reporting instances of child sexual abuse by priests to law enforcement. There were priests who were paid off, and they went on to pursue professions working with families and working with children. There were negotiated settlements with victims that required secrecy, so the public was really in the dark about a lot of these most egregious cases. And then we also saw that he filed liens against victims, survivors, even those that the Archdiocese acknowledges in some of these documents had valid claims, but they were outside the statute of limitations. I just want to highlight a couple things, because I know you all are so busy, you don't have time to go through maybe every single site that we included in our document, but I wanted to highlight a couple of these cases to show Matt Flynn's involvement. So one of the cases we highlight is Raymond Adamski. And this case really does highlight Flynn's role in the Milwaukee Archdiocese with these repeated allegations against priests who were continually transferred. And this case makes clear that even after many, many different allegations, in 1992, he's again assigned, he's again transferred, and you have notations in this file by the vicars thanking Flynn for meeting with them and helping them accomplish another transfer in the wake of other allegations against Raymond Adamski. There's a case, and this is one of the worst ones, honestly, that I read, of Daniel Buzinski. He admitted during a forensic examination by the Milwaukee Archdiocese to abusing dozens and dozens of kids. And there's very little done, even though this evaluation, the results are reported directly to Matt Flynn. And so there's very little done. This guy goes on to retire with full benefits, and for the next decade, he represents himself as a priest. Nothing's done. He's abused ultimately about 50 children. And then the other one I just wanted to highlight, there's many, many in here. I could talk a long time about these, is the case of a priest called Lawrence Murphy. And it came out during one of these Milwaukee Archdiocese psychological evaluations that Flynn was privy to, that this priest had literally sexually abused about 200 deaf children because he was the priest at a deaf school. And again, you look at these files, and very little is done. And Flynn's role in the Murphy case is detailed in this file. That why was nothing done? Why was this person allowed to go on and go back to the parish? He actually retired with really nothing ever happening to him. So this is why we're here today. We're not here to talk about the Russians or Johnny Cash or the Army, which is, I know that Matt Flynn wants to talk about all that. That's not why we're here. We take this very, very seriously being here. I've never publicly called for somebody to withdraw from running. Both Representative Sargent and I take that very, very seriously. We're here because we were so alarmed by what we saw in these documents. And we believe that we have an obligation to speak out about what this history reveals. So that is why we are here, and now Representative Sargent is going to say a few words. So today is a tough day. It is pretty unprecedented to have folks like Representative Taylor and I standing up in front of the state of Wisconsin and encouraging someone to step aside from running for office. We are usually folks who are cheering folks on to run for office. But quite frankly, Matt Flynn's response, his continued response, lack of response to his involvement, his inability and failure to address the serious questions and allegations that have been made after reading thousands of pages of documents of very concerning history. What Matt has done is he has pivoted and distracted. He isn't addressing the concerns that have been brought forward. And that is not behavior that's becoming of a governor of the state of Wisconsin. In addition, I feel very strongly that it illustrates a lack of compassion or even a simple understanding of why people are raising up and asking these questions. If he had a response to us, if he had a response to anyone that was serious, I'm not sure that we would be here today. And as Democrats, it's really important for us to remember that our party is a welcoming party, that we have room for folks under our tent, that we stand up for people that are facing adversity. But we don't have room for people that are going to hide and protect people who have been harassing and victimizing kids and survivors in the state of Wisconsin for decades. And quite frankly, we're not talking about, I would hope, the fact that Matt is a Democrat. If he was a Republican, we would be asking these very same questions. This is not a partisan issue. While it is an unusual issue, it is not a partisan issue. And I know from talking to folks across the state of Wisconsin that what people want in an elected official, in the governor, the person who's going to be leading our state, is someone who's open and honest, someone who's transparent in the way that they do things. And what they don't want is someone who's dismissive. They don't want someone who's unresponsive and evasive. Our kids and our families in Wisconsin deserve better. And that is requiring us, Representative Taylor and I, to stand up and take this very unprecedented action. Because quite frankly, what it is that we're seeing from Matt Flynn is unbecoming behavior of a gubernatorial candidate. And he has attempted to pivot over and over again, but he is not answering these allegations. He's not coming forward and allowing the people of our state to understand what it is that happened. And quite frankly, Representative Taylor and I are not puppets and pawns for anyone. We are here as independent, elected citizens of the state of Wisconsin who have concerns after spending weeks and weeks scouring through documents and listening to the responses that Matt Flynn has, or lack of response, I guess is a better way to put it, has given to the people of our state as they've raised these grave concerns. And that's why we're here, because he has an inability to justify his actions, and he's acting in an evasive manner, and that is behavior that is unbecoming of a governor of the great state of Wisconsin.
My name is my name is Peter Isley, I-S-E-L-Y. One of the founding members and longtime Midwest director of SNAP, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. I'm talking on behalf of my fellow survivors and victims in this state from the Milwaukee Archdiocese in particular, but to all survivors of childhood sexual violence and all sexual violence. And we can't thank these representatives enough for what they're doing, because they took the time And this is what they do in their work. I already knew that. They work with children and families. That's what they focus on. That's what they care about. So it's logical that when they heard about Flynn's involvement with the Archdiocese in a general way, that they would go and they would take the time to go through 10,000 pages, basically, of documents. And one of the things that's been sort of difficult about this issue is not that there's so little evidence, is that there's so much evidence. And it's scattered across these pages. And they took the time to find it and get it and put it together and bring it to the public. And what they concluded, we believe virtually every citizen of the state is going to conclude, which is that Flynn, it's incontrovertible. And I know you don't have time maybe to read these documents, but I'm going to say, read the documents. Go to the link and read the documents. And I'll guarantee you one thing that'll happen. If you do that tonight, you're not going to sleep tonight. I can guarantee you are not going to get any sleep tonight. These are some of the worst cases of serial pedophiles in the history of our state. Just in that document, cases you're being given. Father Murphy, Matt Flynn knew this. He's the one who was in charge of the emergency committee, or part of that committee, that put together the evaluation to find out the extent of the abuse and harm and damage this priest had done. And what did the evaluation conclude? That this man, this monster, had sexually assaulted over 200 deaf children. Let me say this again, because I'm giving you information that Matt Flynn was told, not just from the evaluation, but as you can see in the documents, he met after this evaluation directly with this priest. Directly with him. 200 deaf children. This man has raped and sexually assaulted. And what did Matt Flynn do about it? What did he do about it? He sent that man back up to Boulder Junction, where they had put him, where he was working in a parish, where he was still in contact with the deaf community. He sent him right out of that evaluation, and that's where he went. And did it go to the police and law enforcement? No. Did he notify the public? No. Did he notify that parish in St. Anne's in Boulder Junction that he was doing ministry in? No. What did he do? He let him skate right back there. And he died, not spending one day, not 1 minute, not 1 second in jail or prison or in a police station. And that's just one case. Chris has told you about Budzinski. Again, another evaluation that Flynn in their policy commissioned. And that policy in there that you'll see that they've notated, that policy, their internal policy, was very clear. Flynn, as counsel, was triggered and notified of every allegation that was coming in. Every single one. So he had knowledge of it all. As Archbishop Weakland says in his deposition in 2010, Matt had the list. He didn't even have the list, the Archbishop. Matt had the list. He had the greatest amount of knowledge about the widespread crimes taking place against children for decades in southeastern Wisconsin. Him. He had the knowledge. When there was a case of somebody, of a priest that Flynn knew about, Weakland didn't know about him. And I'll say this very specifically because I am very confident that that priest was the priest who assaulted and raped me. And then many others after me. What did Flynn... If Flynn comes in, we've got this Capuchin priest. Weakland says, this is Weakland's deposition. Yeah, we're responsible for him because he's in one of our parishes, at that point at St. Robert's. What does Weakland say? Flynn, I'm going to take care of it. Weakland doesn't know anything more about it. And I'll tell you more about it. Because it's Father Liefeld, Gail Liefeld. He remained undetected, unnotified, in the community, at St. Robert's, moved around, okay? So, I mean, obviously you could say I go on and on. But the evidence is absolutely rock solid. That's why Flynn is not going to respond to any of it. Because it's absolutely true. And what he's told us and his campaign manager, Brian Kennedy, who have attacked victims recently. Susan Smith, one of the early cases that were filed against the Archdiocese, that she had to drop because of a First Amendment decision here by the Supreme Court that you can't file suits against the Catholic Church. That Flynn argued. Did you know about that? Probably not. She had to drop her case. He went after her for costs. That's what he did. When the Archdiocese, with her offender, he was a serial offender, with these cases he went after for costs, admitted to the Archdiocese, the offender, I assaulted that plaintiff as a child. I did it. And the Archdiocese moved that offender into that location, into that parish with prior knowledge. So they did that too. And so what do you get for that as a victim? You're filing a case because they're not doing anything about this priest that raped you. He's still in a parish or another parish. You've told the Archdiocese. Archdiocese has told Flynn. They haven't done anything about it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You've got one recourse left, to file a lawsuit to make it public. That's all you got. And then what happens when you have to drop that case? Because of this absurd Supreme Court decision, First Amendment decision. What do? You get costs taken against you filed by Matt Flynn. And Brian Kennedy, his campaign manager, on social media, has attacked this woman again. She's been attacked for 30 years. He's out there saying she didn't know the priest. She didn't even know who he was. She was abused probably by somebody else, not the priest. Same arguments Flynn made in depositions. This is unacceptable. That's why they're here. That's why I'm here. And I just believe the victims in this state and the families are behind what we're trying to do here. And Flynn can go and he can attack Tony Evers. Let's make it about him. Okay, it has nothing to do with him. And Tony and the others, they support the Child Victims Act. And they're going to go through the process we hope these two have. They're going to read the documents. They've got the best specialists right now in their party, right here, these two. And I'm hoping, praying, that they're going to call these two, and they're going to talk about this, and they're going to walk them through those documents. So, that's it.
Thank you so much, Peter. You can see Peter has really dedicated his entire adult life to try to bring some justice to these victims. I would encourage you all. I know it's 7 pages, our summaries, but we really did try to keep them right to the point. We tried to just focus in on Flynn's role. I really would encourage you to read them, and I'd encourage you to go ask Matt Flynn. What's wrong? What did we get wrong? I don't think we got anything wrong because we looked at the priest's own files. And then the last thing I want to say is, there's been some talk, well, he was just doing his job. He was an attorney. And I was a practicing attorney, too, for about 7 years, a little more than 7 years. And I can tell you, you make choices all the time as an attorney. You choose how you're going to act. You choose how you're going to conduct yourself. And there was absolutely so many other options available to Matt Flynn to hold these abusers accountable, to protect the public, to protect children. And he didn't do it. He chose instead to shield these perpetrators for decades, some of them, and place children and communities at risk. And we both, Representative Sargent and I, just thought, we got to speak out about this. If we don't speak out about this and we know it, then shame on us, really. And after reading these documents, there was just no way we couldn't say something about it. And it did take a while to get through them, I will say. We have been, started working on this after that Wisconsin Gazette article to try to figure out, what actually happened here? And once you start reading them, you cannot stop reading them because the question you will ask yourself is, how on earth did this happen? How did people let this go on and on and on? So, again, we believe that Matt should withdraw from this race. And, at the very least, we're going to make sure that at least voters know what his role was in really shielding dozens and dozens of priests who are known childhood sexual predators. So we're happy to answer any questions from you all.
So Matt Flynn is suggesting that Tony Evers' campaign, and this was touched on briefly by all of you, that his campaign is the one that's pressuring Flynn to drop out of the race. Let me just ask you straight up, did Evers' campaign ever call on you to?
No. And Matt Flynn, I think, knows this because I had a conversation with Matt Flynn, and I communicated my concerns to Matt Flynn. And I was hoping for him to actually refute some of the facts I was asking him about, and that did not happen. That did not happen. And so, no, nobody asked us to do this. I, in 2013, was one of the lead authors of the Child Victims Act, which extends the statute of limitations. And when I saw that Wisconsin Gazette article, I realized I don't really know a lot about this issue. I really don't. And so started reading the files, went to the source, and was pretty horrified pretty quickly about what had occurred. So that's really what started it. But no campaign has asked us to do anything. And hopefully those who know us know that we are independent and we speak our own minds, and we are, fierce advocates for what we believe in.
I think that article came out about 6 weeks ago,
Yeah.
Give or take. What took so long for you to come to this conclusion? If you said it came to you pretty quickly that there was something wrong.
We wanted to make sure that we were getting it right. There are thousands and thousands of pages in those documents. And this is pretty, like I said, it's pretty unprecedented what it is that we're doing here today. And it's not an easy place to land. And we wanted to make sure that when we made our statement that we were able to provide solid and accurate information to y'all, as well as to ourselves, because we realized that we're going out on a limb here. But quite frankly, as we went through the documents and as we talked to different people that were affected, and read and heard what it is that Matt Flynn has said in the meantime, we continue to pivot and distract from really what it is that's on the table here. It's very clear that Matt Flynn had his hands in this pot, and anytime people ask him about that, he will deflect to Tony Evers' campaign, or to owls in a tree, or to the fact that Chris and I can't do something on our own. And quite frankly, he's not answering the questions that you are asking him. And I would encourage you, as you continue to walk down this path and research this for yourselves, that you hold him accountable for real answers here. And don't accept these sound bites that he continues to throw our way. The people of the state of Wisconsin deserve better.
You'll see if you go on just a website and you start looking at any of these individual files, you'll see how long they are. You'll see how many pages. And we're working on many other issues here in the Capitol. And so we wanted to base what we said on what we saw in the files, and not what was on social media, not what was on Facebook. And that takes a while. And you'll see if you look at these documents why it took so long. But hopefully we've made it really easy for you to get to the most relevant documents. And these are only a few cases. I think we have 9 cases that we've highlighted. I mean, I don't know how many priests are on that website, maybe 50? So it's a lot.
The state party didn't comment on the situation. Do you hope that they reconsider and stand with your decision? Help them step down?
We did get them our summary. So I'm not sure if they're going to comment or not, but we did forward the materials to them. Again, it's a lot to go through these files. So our goal is really just to get the truth out, to get the facts out, and hope that people, and we have great confidence in the people of this state. I mean, I think I'm very confident that voters see how alarming this stuff is. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, the sexual abuse of children is alarming. It doesn't matter what your party affiliation is.
Lawyers throughout their career are asked to represent monsters all the time. Should those lawyers be accountable for representing them?
Well, you get into different ethical and legal issues depending on whether it's your client as a perpetrator or not. I mean, I think in this case you had Matt Flynn, I think, in a really, in some ways, more even critical role than a defense attorney, because he was in charge of the archdiocese response. And there was no prescribed response. They could have done a lot of different things. And unfortunately, the response was to cover it up, to try to make it go away, to not bring it to the public's light, even when you had priests who admitted to dozens and dozens and dozens of children being abused. So we believe there was another response here. We believe there was another choice here. And it's hard to understand why the choices were made, why Matt Flynn made the choices he made to cover this up, because it really just led to more silence and more agony, I think, for the people who were impacted.
I think quickly your question, though, it's not just what you're saying, it's also what he says he did, what he's been saying he did when he talks about it. That's what he should be held accountable for. So, for instance, he has said on numerous occasions about the transfer of priests. Now, this is one of the most egregious things about the whole cover-up around the United States and the world, is that you have a known sex offender, known, verified, in a parish, either leave him in the parish or you transfer him to some other parish location. Okay? So he has said repeatedly that that stopped. That didn't happen under him. Okay? It did. You'll see the chart that's been put together, very carefully put together, and 23 priests were transferred with sexual abuse histories into new assignments while Matt Flynn was their chief counsel. And he was involved in these transfers. You'll see in the Adamski file the letter from the vicar of priests to Matt thanking him for facilitating and discussion of that transfer and of all the guys. So, 23. And that he needs to be held accountable for, regardless of your philosophical question about the law and other things that he has been clearly saying that are not true. And you can prove they're not true by the documents.
Just to be clear, you're saying Matt Flynn is lying about his part in covering up and moving priests.
If he is saying, okay, you can ask him to get it clarified, that no priests were transferred with sexual abuse histories while he was counsel for the archdiocese during those 15 years. Okay? And he says, no, they weren't. That is a lie. That is an incontrovertible lie. Or he's going to tell you, yeah, some of them were transferred. Then you're going to ask, which ones? Why were they transferred? Under what circumstances and conditions? Let's look at that particular file and discuss the sequence of transfers. There's no other answers to give other than about calling up, preparation for the Russian Navy. I guess there's no other. What other answer can you give?
Yeah, and there's other examples of priests when they, come and a lot of them admit when they are in these evaluations, we just let them go back. We just let them go back, or they let them retire. And the problem is when a priest retires, they're still in the community doing priestly functions, doing certain ceremonies. And so if nobody knows, in so many of these cases, just the public didn't know. The public didn't know for a long time that they had a predator in their midst. And this is incontrovertible when you look at these documents. Any other questions?
Have either of you endorsed anyone, or do you intend to endorse anyone in the primary?
No.
Don't intend to?
I don't intend to.
Is it strictly about Flynn not having the moral character for governor, or is there some other thing that you're hoping comes out of this? I guess also could you hear from you on this? Obviously it's getting a lot more exposure. Are you hoping to see something else?
Yeah, and we've talked about this. The most positive outcome that can come out of this, one is that talking about sexual violence again. And what's so important about with Flynn's involvement is the institutional and corporate nature of it. This is how it works. This is how institutions and corporations enable sex offenders and people who sexually harass. Here's your object lesson right here. So that's very important. Concretely, though, for the state and for survivors and for the safety of the community is the Child Victims Act. The Child Victims Act would eliminate the civil statute of limitations on child sex abuse. That's very important because historically the criminal statute has been very, very short, like 6 years. So if you're raped at age 5, you got till 11 to come forward. Okay, that's ridiculous. It's not going to happen. So the civil statute will allow any victim with evidence, witnesses, and proof to bring that offender or that organization that covered him up to court in a due process. At the end of that process, if successful and proven, that offender is going to have to give compensation and restitution. That organization is going to have to be identified for what they have done. So that's really important. Open the civil statute. And the Child Victims Act, which has been passed in several states, opens up, in fairness, for past victims, a window of time, 2 to 3 years, that allows past victims to come forward and file cases. That's really important in Wisconsin because you can't file negligence cases against any religious organization based upon a 1995 and then 97 Supreme Court decision, argued by Matt Flynn, that no religious organization, religious predator, bishop, supervisor can be brought to court, civil court, because of the First Amendment, because it interferes with the practice of religion. We're the only state in the entire country that has this. It's dangerous. It makes Wisconsin the safest place for pedophile clergy in the United States. So specifically on that issue, but the Child Victims Act is for every victim, childhood victim of sexual assault, and because of a particular denomination's horrible history and problem with this, that should not prevent other victims of coaches and teachers or family members to be able to go into court, which is what they've done.
And I just wanted, these are the pictures of the kids who were sexually assaulted by priests. That's why we're here today. Those children. There's thousands of children.
So these are all actual survivors.
These are survivors of
this is the
horrible
age
conduct.
that they were assaulted.
That they were assaulted.
That's what they look like.
Here are these children. And I don't know how anyone can dismiss Matt
Some of the
Flynn's
things that you're alleging against him are almost to the standard of legal misconduct. Are you going to pursue charges against him for legal misconduct?
We're
or
not.
are you encouraging people to do so?
No, we're not here today to go down that road. What we're here, why we did what we did, was to hope that he would not continue his run for governor. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But secondly, voters should know this history. And I, again, believe, doesn't matter if you're Republican, doesn't matter if you're Democrat, if you're independent, the people of this state do not support covering up child sexual abuse. And that was Matt Flynn's role. He was at the center of that. So how can we ignore that? We can't ignore that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.